Yo, what is up guys, Grim here. Are you looking for some new builds? Maybe some builds you haven't played before? Well, in this video, I'm going to go over the top 5 endgame builds that I've scouted from other people and other creators, and I'm going to feature them here in this video. If you've seen or played any of these builds and you really enjoyed them, make sure you comment down below and talk about which variation you enjoyed best to help everybody else out and kind of picking a build and seeing if they want to try it. Without further ado though, let's dive into the top 5 builds in no particular order. First up, we've got the Hexblast Miner, a bossing focused build fully capable of doing all content, including the Ubers. It's fantastic for Sanctum farming and is also a very good one for mapping, as it can run all map modifiers. In the background here, you're seeing some footage from Captain Lance, the first person I saw to put out a guide for this build, so if you want more and you're interested in playing it, definitely go check out that guide. It'll be linked down below. Let's talk a little bit more about the build though. So of course, it's a massively good all-rounder with extreme bossing potential. As a miner, your advantage is being able to preload all of your mines and blow up any boss as they spawn, making it fantastic for obviously all the bosses, but also for Sanctum, as you'll be able to preload all those mines and instantly blow up all of the Sanctum bosses. So it's a great all-rounder for that as well. Now, how does the build work? Well, it's using the newly refurbished Hexblast skill, which you can see here. Now, Hexblast is an incredibly powerful skill, taking advantage of hexes and removing them and all sorts of stuff like that. But the big downside, and the reason it wasn't used before, is that A, it's got a very bad cast time. 1 second cast time is extremely long, and B, it's got a very, very low critical strike chance, making it pretty difficult to scale into the endgame, especially as a miner who always wants to go crit. Well, these two things are solved. Well, first of all, you solve the cast speed problem by going mines, so you can really take advantage of that massive increased effective additive damage, and it's going to be really great. And the next thing to solve is that low 4% crit chance. Well, that's solved with one of the new unique items, Sandstorm Visage. So this item is very easily accessible and is pretty much one of the core items of the build. Now, this specific helmet, all it requires is, obviously having a very high critical strike weapon, and that critical strike will then be applied to your skill instead. So the idea is that you grab an incredibly high critical strike caster weapon like a wand or something along those lines, with the actual increased damage that you'd expect from a wand, and that'll turbocharge your critical strike chance, as well as giving you a ton of damage that you'd normally expect from a wand, solving all the problems of Hexblast with minimal investment, which is fantastic. And all of this combines to give you a super well-rounded build, which is fantastic for bossing and Sanctum. But of course, it is a miner, so people beware. It will be a little bit on the squishy side. I believe I checked out the POB from Lance, and it's only got roughly 41,000 EHP. So definitely something to consider, but it is an energy shield based build from what I saw on Lance. So you do have that to play around with, and you can have that energy shield recharge for a bit of sustain. But nonetheless, a pretty fantastic all-rounder and bosser. Alright, next on the scene, we have an old favorite revived, Summoning Raging Spirits. So Summoning Raging Spirits has been pretty bad for a long time, but it's back in 3.20 in a massive way. In the background here, you're seeing Balormage's Poison SRS take, which is supremely tanky with a good amount of investment. It has some of the most EHP I've seen on an actual well-rounded character, outside of aura stackers. So it is very, very tanky, very, very durable. And if you're looking for a character which is able to do Sanctum very, very well, in addition to doing bosses very, very well, and is that tanky level of durability, this one might be the play for you. It's also got that no aim playstyle and is a minion build, which is obviously fantastic. A bit of a departure from traditional minion builds, which are normally pretty flimsy and quite squishy. All right, so this build is obviously majorly focused on poison, featuring the United in Dream Cutlass, which hasn't seen much play for a very long time, but it allows all of your minions to pretty much poison a good amount of the time, and also grants you the Envy skill, which you're going to be juicing up as a Necromancer to give all of your Summon Raging Spirits massive amounts of chaos damage. In addition to that, the newly buffed Covenant from last league is seeing its feature here, and finally being in a meta build, which is very, very powerful. So you're going to get level 29 added chaos damage to your summon raging spirits as well, which is obviously going to juice them up substantially and increase those poisons as well. So overall, if you're looking to play a minion build focused on Sanctum, bossing, and which has respectable clear, summon raging spirits, poison style could be good. I'll link Balormages down below. If you're interested in a hardcore player's perspective, DSLily has also got a take on this. I'll try and find her video as well and link that down below as well if you're interested in most likely an even more tanky version. There's a budget as well as high budget version, and I'll try and link everything down below, but definitely a pretty damn good minion build, one of the most well-rounded I've actually ever seen. Doomblast is up next. It is quite possibly the build of the league, a product of the new curse rework similar to Hexblast. It is a very, very cool and fun build and a brand new fresh contender. Now we'll get into how the build works in a second here, but there are two variants of this build on display. Both of them are, to my knowledge, fully capable of doing all map modifiers as well as being pretty well rounded in the content they can achieve. So being able to do bosses as well as pretty good at mapping, and you should be able to get it up and going on a reasonable budget as well without having to break the bank, because the skill is just so powerful and, in all honesty, quite overtuned. So what are the two variants? Well, there is a poison damage over time variant, which is probably the more popular variant, I would say, and then there is also a hit-based critical strike version. Now both versions are powerful and they're both fairly durable, so it really doesn't matter which way you go, really just is a playstyle and preference kind of direction there. Now there is multiple content creators playing multiple versions of these builds, so if you want to go and take a look at the poison version, I'm going to link someone, Zizaran, down below, who is pretty reliable with his builds. I think he's doing it on hardcore, could be worth checking out and seeing what his take is. There's also a ton of other players playing the poison version like Ru2, as well as a ton of others. Now the hit-based version, I've only seen one variant of this on YouTube, and that is by Fyregrass, so I'll link that one down below, and that's what you're seeing in the background here in terms of footage. Alright, let's talk a little bit about how this big league-defining skill works. So Doomblast here is a support gem that actually triggers whenever a hex on a monster ends. It'll basically blow the curse up and do damage based on the type of hex that was on the target. So for example, if it was Frostbite, it would do cold damage. And then obviously there's stuff like, like all different ones, Enfeeble, Temporal Chains, you name it, there's a different corresponding damage type to go with it, which is pretty damn cool. Very customizable. Now, what's the trick? How can you make Doomblast trigger every single time you cast? Because that's the name of the game. That is how the Doomblast builds work. Well, enter Vixen's Entrapment. Essentially, every time you cast, it'll apply all the curses socketed in Vixen's Entrapment to the target, which is really great. Now, the characters all are set up to have a curse limit of 3, but with Vixen's, you apply 4 curses. The interaction is a little bit complex, but it's fair to say the game can't handle you applying 4 curses while only having 3 as a total maximum, so it essentially blows one of them up straight away, triggering your Doomblast, meaning every single time you cast, you're essentially Doomblasting on the spot, giving you a very, very effective playstyle, and essentially a big nuclear curse missile on every single attack, which is super satisfying. And that really does create a very powerful playstyle. Not only do you get to blow those curses up, you're also applying triple curses to everything you hit, meaning it's going to be very, very defensive and very strong, making a pretty well-rounded beast, if you wouldn't mind me saying. Alright, so another thing to consider though is obviously the 2 versions. You're going to have to kind of pick your own adventure there, but if you're going with the on-hit version you're seeing in the background here, it's a power charge stacking build, taking advantage of all the different power charge technology which has come out recently. Definitely recommend going and checking out all that stuff, but you can get like 9 or so power charges and frenzy charges pretty much permanently up on a pretty decent budget for the most part, using Fire's setup, which I've taken a look at, and it's also durable and very tanky. In addition to that, it also does use the Sandstorm Visage unique helmet as well, so it's definitely finding its way into quite a few of these builds. Definitely one I'd recommend checking out if you haven't already. Alright, let's pull out the big guns and check out some high budget builds here. Now, if you've been living under a rock and you haven't heard about this build, well, let me bring you up to speed. We've got Palsteron's Shockwave Static Strike Autobomber Strength Stacking Edition. Alright, so Static Strike, a melee skill no one ever uses. How does it work? Well, when you hit an enemy with Static Strike, it's going to charge your character. Now, while you're moving around or doing anything, you're going to fire out beams beams from your character which hit enemies around you. Now, this isn't particularly good by itself, but it's a melee skill, remember, so it can trigger the Shockwave support, which is a massive explosion if you scale enough AoE, and responsible for this character's really good clear and damage. So it's basically using those two things in combination to attack while moving. Very, very cool concept. Now, also, it's using strength stacking, which is why it's such a high budget build. But, you know, it's a fantastic way to build melee characters and all characters in general. So, of course, we've got to have Alberon's Warpath here, which is going to be where most of your damage comes from and where most of the budget comes from. So you're going to get chaos damage based on your strength. In addition to that, he's also using all of the other strength stacking stuff like Iron Fortress for defense, as well as Red Blade Banner combined with Battlemage's Cry alternate quality to give you a ton of damage from Iron Will. So overall, it's the full strength stacking package along with a new fresh take on this melee auto bombing playstyle. Link down below to Palsteron's guide. Absolutely could not recommend it more if you want to try something fresh and new. Last but certainly not least, we have not a build but an item, more specifically a ring. One might say one ring to rule them all, and that is the Nimis Topaz ring, which has been causing quite a stir in the community and has spawned quite a few variants of builds, and in my opinion is one of the most powerful items ever introduced to the game. Now, this is certainly not a cheap ring by any stretch of the imagination. It's like 20 to 30 divines. However, it does allow you to augment so many of the skills in the game in such a drastic way, it had to be on this list. Now, there's a number of different skills which are using Nimis right now. In the background here, you've got Poison Spark from Crouching Tuna, which is a fantastic build that utilizes Nimis. Now, Spark traditionally is a great skill already. If you guys didn't know, you shoot out sparks from your character, you'd prefer them to be in all directions, which Nimis allows. You can fire all the sparks in random directions, which is great. But not only that, when Spark shoots its projectiles out, they have a duration, and after that duration is up, they're gone and they disappear. However, Nimis states that all projectiles must return to you. So while Spark has like a duration of, let's say, 3 seconds, all the sparks go out. When they would normally despawn, they actually now return to you, hitting everything on the way back again. It's worked out to be around double duration on Spark, which is particularly powerful, and it's in all of the Spark builds that you would expect. So in the background here, obviously Poison Spark, great, it'll be down in the description. This is definitely one of the most powerful applications of Nimis, and it is definitely one I'd recommend. And there's also Self-Chill Spark, which uses Nimis as well. Definitely a little bit less on the popular side, but also very strong. Now, there's two other things I want to talk about here, and they are Kinetic Blast and Caustic Arrow. We'll start out with Caustic Arrow. So Caustic Arrow is a really, really great skill. It's used in a lot of clear focused builds, and Nimis allows it to essentially fire in all directions, which is a really big quality of life, but also allows it to shotgun on the way back. So you shoot out projectiles in all directions, and then they all converge on you, all of them hitting the target once again, allowing you to get massive single target damage on Caustic Arrow, which is particularly potent. I think this build is probably going to see a lot more play in the future, as it is a very powerful interaction, and it is actually a pretty good clear skill as well, especially on an occultist. Next up though, we have probably, in my opinion, the pick of the most powerful build, which is semi-new in the game, and that is Kinetic Blast Nimis Edition. So I don't really have too much footage here to show you guys of this yet, as it's a build I intend to design and play myself, a mapping variant that is. However, I can pretty much say this is one of the most broken clearing skills in the game right now, right up there with the likes of Tornado Shot, Venom Gyre, Blade Vortex, and Spark itself. Being able to shoot Kinetic Blast in all directions, and then obviously having them return to you and then blow up once again on you, so you get multiple explosions on the way out as they fork and chain, and then they all come back to you exploding once again and then blowing up one final time on you, basically just littering the map with explosions and kinetic blasts, which is just a massively powerful interaction. So overall, Nimis, while not one specific build, if you want to have a build to go and play, I recommend Poison Spark with Nimis. However, there's going to be, in my opinion, some real powerhouses coming out of this ring, and I can't wait to showcase them to you guys. So if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to like if you can, and comment down below what favorite build that you've got in this video. These videos do take quite a bit of time, so I'd appreciate it. But until next time, hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys then. Cheers.